There is more drama going down in the WNBA today. Just like I told y'all, Caitlin Clark went on a telling spree yesterday. You know, I feel like her words was twisted. We're going to get into that in some of this video, but we have to talk about these WNBA.
Two players, the same exact move, hands coming together, a clap. One of them got hit with a technical foul for it. The other did it live, in front of an official, and walked away clean. So which player got punished? Stick with me, because the answer and the reason behind it is messier than a bad call.
She wasn't ejected. She wasn't none of that. They let her do it. Well, I'm here to tell you, in another episode of the WNBA soap opera, we have a player clapping in the face of a referee. They did not receive a technical foul or none of that. And this is a player that everyone has.
Here's the setup. A couple of weeks back, Caitlin Clark, the biggest draw in women's basketball right now, was given a technical foul for clapping. Not for cursing anyone out, not for throwing anything, for clapping in a teammate's direction. Then this week, a veteran guard gets far more animated, right in an official's eye line, and the whistle stays silent. Same league, same rulebook, completely different outcome. And the player who slid this time is one of the most outspoken people in the entire sport. I'll say her name in a second, but first you need to understand exactly what Clark got flagged for, because it's more absurd than it sounds.
Oh, she talked too much. That is Natasha Cloud, man. Natasha Cloud is making waves online today. And I'm telling you right now, we need to blow this up. This has to get blown up because Caitlin Clark was on the bench. She was on the bench.
Natasha Cloud, a WNBA champion, an 11-year veteran, and a player who has never once been afraid to say exactly what's on her mind. That detail matters, and we'll come back to it, because Cloud's relationship with officials is a whole story of its own. And the wrinkle that sent people into orbit online is this. When it played out, Caitlin Clark wasn't even on the floor. She was sidelined, watching from the bench. So the two images fans kept slamming together were these: the most watched player in the league carrying a technical for clapping, while an outspoken veteran gets heated at an official in live action and nothing happens. Now, before anyone screams conspiracy, slow down, because the footage is what makes this land. Let's look at what the broadcast itself caught.
Now, this young lady right here had an epic crash out. Epic crash out, bro. And it's just beyond me how Caitlin Clark conducts herself like a professional. And she got a damn technical for clapping. They're catching the post. Natasha Cloud out here crashing out and clapping in front of the officials, but she didn't get a tech. Even the announcer was shocked.
And this is where it stops being just fan noise. The claim in this clip is simple. Cloud got fired up and clapped toward an official, and no technical came. I want to be careful here, because I'm going off what this footage shows, not an official report. But watch what happens next, because the people questioning it aren't randoms with a keyboard. It's the broadcast crew calling the actual game. And keep one number in your back pocket as we go, because it changes everything. Clark's clapping technical wasn't her first of the year, it was her fifth. Fifth technical in roughly 16 games. Why does that number matter so much it could get her suspended? Hold it, there's a hard line in the WNBA rulebook I'll get to, and it turns every one of these calls into something far bigger than a single clap. Listen to the announcers.
Traded on that one.
She's got to be careful clapping.
Yes.
And officials, I mean, I have seen technicals be assessed for that action.
Yes.
Sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not.
I think her teammates helped her off the court quickly enough to where
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Sit with that line, because that is a broadcaster, someone who watches this league every single night, openly admitting there's no consistent standard. Sometimes that action gets you a technical, sometimes it doesn't. Based on what? Nobody can tell you. And that right there is the whole ballgame. It was never really about one wrong call. It's that the same behavior produces a punishment for one player and total silence for another, with no visible logic connecting them. And this is where it gets ugly, because the internet did what the internet does. The second that clip started spreading, people didn't just say, "That's inconsistent." They jumped straight to the darkest possible explanation. Some of what got posted went from "the refs are inconsistent" to "the refs are being told to do this on purpose." That's a serious accusation. So let me show you exactly what was said and then be straight with you about which parts hold up and which parts fall apart the second you check them.
She wasn't even on the court. She wasn't even on the court. Mind you, she was on the bench. Let's read this. The referees have been instructed to turn down Caitlin Clark. All other get a pass. The only player in history of the W to get a technical foul for clapping. Caitlin, 30 years into the league existence, that the W version of Shanae's sisterhood. Yeah, it definitely is. Is it the same?
Let's separate the signal from the smoke. That first line, that officials have been instructed to treat Clark differently. Hear me clearly. There is no evidence of that. None. No memo, no leak, no official on record, nothing. It's a claim someone typed into a phone while they were angry, and it spread because it confirmed a feeling a lot of people already had. So call it what it is, an unverified accusation, not a fact. If anyone actually had proof that a league was ordering referees to target one specific player, that would be one of the biggest scandals in the history of American sports, and it would not be living in a random screenshot. So set the conspiracy down. But, and this is the part that matters, strip that away and there is still something very real underneath. The verifiable part is this. Clark got a technical for clapping. The Fever appealed it, the league reviewed it, and the league refused to rescind it. That's not a rumor. That's on the record, reported by the beat writers who cover this team. And that decision looks even stranger once you know what the league did for a different player who clapped. Keep reading because the receipts are about to get specific.
Same referee refs, the tech Caitlin Clark received for clapping needs to be outed. I mean, refs, the technical need to be overturned, and this video cloud is clapping, and refs did nothing. Be consistent. Facts. Somebody else said had a very similar one versus the Liberty a few weeks ago. They didn't call that either. Selective enforcement in.
Be consistent. 2 words, and that's the entire demand. Not protect Clark, not punish Cloud. Just pick a standard and apply it to everybody. And here's the receipt that makes the inconsistency impossible to wave off. Earlier this same season, another guard, Paige Buakers, was given a technical foul for clapping during a rally. Same offense, near identical situation. The difference? The league rescinded hers. They took Buakers' clapping technical off the board and left Clark standing. 2 players, same clap, opposite rulings from the same league. That's not a fan theory. That's documented. And it's a symptom of something much bigger happening in the WNBA this year. Over the offseason, the league's commissioner created an entire officiating task force, and referees were told to tighten up and call more fouls. And they did. The number of fouls being whistled jumped sharply to start the season, from the mid-30s a game into the mid-40s. Players and coaches all over the league revolted. This is the thing the drama accounts leave out. It's not just Clark. Stars and coaches across the WNBA have been screaming about the officiating all season long because the entire standard got rewritten overnight. So the real question isn't why is the league after Caitlin Clark? It's why can't this league call a clap the same way twice? And the answer, the actual answer, comes down to something Clark herself put her finger on. Let's hear her say it.
I don't know. When it comes to Natasha Cloud, somebody said the game can do what she want. Laughing off, she looked crazy. Valid crash out. She stole the ball and the refs gave Aces a timeout.
And a steal that somehow becomes a timeout for the other team. That's exactly the kind of small, in-the-weeds call fans fixate on. And honestly, they're not crazy for it. Once you stop trusting the officiating on the big moments, you stop trusting it on the small ones too. Every whistle turns suspicious. Every no call becomes evidence. That's what happens when a league burns through the benefit of the doubt with its own audience, which is precisely where the WNBA is sitting right now, in the middle of the most scrutinized officiating stretch in its history. But I told you the answer traces back to something Clark said herself, so let's get to it, because this is the part almost nobody covering the outrage actually explains. Here's a question most fans have never even thought to ask about WNBA referees. Not how much they get paid, how. Because the way these officials are employed tells you more about why the calls are all over the place than any conspiracy theory ever could. And the person who spelled it out clearest wasn't a critic or a pundit. It was Caitlin Clark at a podium saying the quiet part out loud. Watch her tone here, because it is not what you'd expect.
Oh, 5 minutes.
And obviously I haven't been available for like a week or so. So, first of all, I know what you guys are going to ask, and I did think it was a flagrant foul. And our reffing just needs to be better. And, it's tough. Obviously the refs are in a really difficult spot. It's one of the hardest jobs in the world, in my opinion, is to make calls. All you do is get yelled at the whole time.
Now that is not the sound of somebody crying about a vendetta. Listen to what she's actually doing. She is defending the referees. She calls it one of the hardest jobs in the world. She points out they get yelled at by everyone, all game long, and basically cannot win. This is the player who supposedly benefits from a rigged system, sitting there having genuine empathy for the people calling the games. That completely scrambles the Clark versus the refs storyline that gets sold for clicks, because Clark isn't framing this as officials out to get her. She's framing it as a league-wide quality problem. The reffing just needs to be better, across the board, for everyone. And that's a far more honest read than the conspiracy version, because it lines up with everything we just walked through. The rescinded technical for one player, the standing technical for another, the league-wide foul explosion, the coaches in open revolt. None of that is a plot against a single person. All of it points to a system that was never built to be consistent in the first place. And Clark, of all people, is about to name the structural fix out loud. Watch.
The clip, I think, is pretty straightforward. It's kind of been a discussion for like 3 years now, and I think we really need to do a better job protecting the people in this league. And, obviously I've been involved in a few of those plays, but there's been plenty others across the league that, haven't got called, go back in post-game or whatever it is. Teams commit clips, nothing really changes. So I think overall the league just has to do better, and we have to invest in those areas. The technology can get better. We can treat the referees a little bit better.
There it is. Pay them like they're full-time employees. That single sentence is the answer, and it's why I held it this long. Because for years, WNBA officials have not been treated the way you might assume. Look at what Clark is asking for. She wants the league to pay its referees like full-time staff, which tells you plainly that they haven't been treated as full-time staff. There's been open discussion for a long time that these officials work on a part-time, per-game basis, without the year-round training, resources, and accountability that a true full-time system would demand. Now think about what that produces. If your officials aren't full-time and uniformly trained together, they don't build one shared standard season over season. So one crew calls a clap a technical, a different crew watches something bigger and lets it ride. And the league is stuck playing cleanup on review, rescinding one clapping technical, upholding another, suspending a player after the fact, because the calls on the floor keep missing. Then, on top of that shaky foundation, the league dropped a brand new officiating mandate this season and told everyone to call it tighter. You rewrote the rulebook's emphasis overnight, handed it to a part-time crew that was never consistent to begin with, and acted surprised when the calls came out scrambled. That's the actual engine behind everything you've watched. Not a secret order to target Clark, a pay and employment structure that was never designed to deliver the consistency a nationally televised, sold-out league now desperately needs. And notice Clark says this has been a discussion for 3 years. 3 years. This isn't new. What's new is that the sport got enormous. The cameras are everywhere, and every inconsistent call now gets frozen, zoomed, and posted within minutes. The league got famous faster than its officiating got fixed. But there's one more piece, and it's the part that turns a basketball argument into something heavier.
Clark is rhetorical.
Before, like the harassment, the hate, none of that is okay. That goes for the opposing team we play, that goes for my teammates, that goes for my coaches. There should never be a question of character. Like I've always stood up here and said that, and that's truly what I believe. That's how I was raised. So, none of that is okay, and I don't want anybody to ever experience that.
And this is where Clark earns real credit, because the easy move was the opposite. She's standing there with every incentive to lean into everyone's out to get me. The crowd would love it. The clips would fly. Instead, she does the hard thing. She says the harassment and the hate that gets aimed at people over this, none of it is okay. And she doesn't just mean toward herself. She specifically says it applies to the opposing teams, to her own teammates, to her coaches. She draws the line at attacks on character. And the irony that blows the whole Clark versus Cloud angle apart is this. Natasha Cloud is not some villain who loves the refs. Cloud is one of the loudest critics of WNBA officiating in the entire league. She's called out referees by name after a teammate suffered a season-ending knee injury, saying the officials failed to protect her. She's argued that referees should be fined for missed calls the same way players get teched for their emotions. She's picked up technicals herself for going at the officials, so Cloud and Clark, the two players fans are pitting against each other, are actually on the same side of the real fight. Both of them are frustrated with the same broken system. Turning this into one player versus another isn't just unfair to Cloud, it completely misses the point. The consistency complaint is fair, the protect the players point is fair. The part where it curdles into harassment, conspiracy, and dogpiling an individual, that's where it goes wrong, and the player at the center of it is the one telling everyone to stop. Which brings us to the human cost of standing in that spotlight. Because in the very same press conference, Clark said something a lot of people skipped right past.
I think it's difficult. I think a lot of people sometimes think I'm a robot. I'm not a robot. I have emotions, I have feelings, and it can be really difficult to go through a lot of that. And I'm 24 years old trying to navigate a lot, and I think at times I've been in this world for 4 years now, and you would never change any of it, but there are times that it is hard, and there are times that, it probably affects me a little bit more than I do put on, and, I would never change any of that for the world, but I think it's important that people do remember that part of it.
I'm not a robot. That one lands, because it's so easy to forget. She's 24 years old. She walked into a league that fought for attention for decades. And almost overnight, she became the single biggest reason a huge chunk of this country started watching. Every game she plays gets dissected frame by frame. Every clap, every reaction, every no call becomes a national argument by dinner time. And she's admitting, out loud, that it wears on her more than she lets on. That's a level of pressure most of us will never touch, being the most scrutinized person in your entire sport, at an age when most people are still figuring out their first real job. And it reframes the clapping technical one more time. Part of why that call detonated into a week-long story is that everything Clark does gets amplified to a degree no other player has to survive. A borderline technical on a role player vanishes by morning. A borderline technical on Caitlin Clark becomes a league statement, an appeal, and 100 reaction videos, this one included. She's a lightning rod, and lightning rods take strikes that were never really about them. That doesn't make inconsistent officiating okay, but it does explain why this exact player, at this exact moment, turns every whistle into a national event. And she clearly feels the weight of it. So what does she actually want to happen from here?
Because, even I turned the TV on Sunday, and that game was on Wednesday, and that's all people are still talking about. And I feel like that's just a real disservice to our league. And I get it. You talk about it. You talk about whether it's flagrant. You talk about whatever it is. But to continue to beat down, and then for the narrative to be taken other places, that is really just not unacceptable. That's just really not acceptable.
And here's her real ask, and it's not what the outrage machine wants it to be. She's frustrated that days later, one call is still the only thing anyone's talking about. While, in her words, more than 10 other games happened, her teammates went out and dominated, and nobody covered any of it. She thinks that's a disservice to the league. Read that carefully, because it's almost a critique of this entire genre, videos like this one included. She's saying, stop letting the officiating drama swallow the actual basketball. There are incredible players putting up huge nights across this league that get buried because the algorithm would rather feed you a referee controversy than a highlight. And she's right. The same spotlight that makes every bad call about Clark is the spotlight that could lift the whole league if it pointed at the games instead of the grievances. So her full position, when you listen to the entire thing instead of the 10-second clip, is remarkably consistent. Officiating needs real investment. Players across the league deserve protection. Harassment is never acceptable, and the sport is bigger than any single whistle. That is a mature, league-first take from a 24-year-old who has every reason to be bitter and refuses to be. Now, the last thing everyone wanted to know was about her health, because Clark had been watching a lot of this unfold while hurt. So is she coming back?
I agree.
Moving on, I know everybody's going to ask about my health. I will be out Sunday, but I'm feeling a lot better, excited to get back into practice today, and then feeling really, really positive about getting back into one of the games at the back-to-back. Obviously, difficult coming back in a back-to-back, so we'll have to be cautious of that, but I feel a lot better, and like I said, excited to get back into practice, and this week has been very helpful for my...
So there's the update. She'll sit the next one out, but she's trending back toward the floor, feeling better, back at practice, and the time off apparently did her some good. And that ratchets up the stakes on everything we just covered, because the moment Clark returns, the whole cycle resets. Every whistle in her next game gets watched under a microscope. Every clap gets counted. And remember that number I told you to hold on to? Her technicals. She was already at 5, near the top of the entire league. And here's the rulebook line I promised you. Reach 8 technical fouls in a season, and you are automatically suspended a game. So if officials really are going to call her clapping a technical, then every borderline whistle from here isn't just an annoyance. It's another step toward Caitlin Clark getting suspended for the crime of putting her hands together. That's not a conspiracy. That's just the cold math of a broken standard colliding with the most watched player in the sport. So here's where I hand it to you, and I want a real answer down in the comments. No fence sitting. After all of it, the clap, the non-call on Cloud, the rescinded technical for Bookers, the league-wide foul explosion, the pay structure Clark pointed at herself, where do you actually land? Option 1, the officiating is just genuinely broken for everybody this season, and Clark's fame makes it look targeted when it isn't. Option 2, intentional or not, she is being held to a different standard than the rest of the league, and the WNBA has to fix it now before it costs her games. Pick one, tell me which, and tell me why, because I read every one of these. And if you made it all the way here, you already know this story is nowhere near done. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter the second she's back on the floor, and drop your take below. I'll see you in the next one.